Okay, in this video I'm going to talk about how to insert and crop vegetation so it kind of looks right, and how to insert context so it in a couple different ways. In this case, kind of mostly using Photoshop and either photographs found from the site's context or that you've taken. So I'll start with the tree here. I'm going to go just search for a cutout tree. In Google, I'll search for a specific type of tree that I know that I would find or that would be appropriate for the location of my project here. This is another case in which it can sometimes be useful to go to Tools, Size, and select Large. So we're only seeing kind of large results. And here we have one that's pretty good, actually. You can see it has a watermark on it, but I'll show you how to deal with that. So I'm going to go ahead and save this one in my folder here and use it in my scene. So I'll go ahead and bring this guy in here. Like I said in my last video, I like to generally like to work from kind of foreground to background in terms of adding stuff. A lot of the time when we add scale figures and when we add vegetation and other layers of detail, you end up needing less information in the background than you might think. So, so I'm going to add the tree and then do kind of some context there. But first of all, we want to figure out how to crop this tree. So what I'm going to do is just kind of simplify a little bit the image there. Oops. And just like in the last video, I want to point out that when you just drag an image in, it'll often create what's called a smart object, and we can see that from the little icon in the bottom right of the layer thumbnail there. And obviously that limits our editability of this layer here. So I'm just going to right click on it and go to rasterize. And again, I'm using just a rectangular selection tool, and I'm just going to delete some stuff. So spending a little less time cropping out weird watermark backgrounds. You can keep the shadow if you want, or we can make it, I'll probably make my own shadow because you can see that the shadow here is kind of as if the light were coming from almost directly above or a little bit in front of us, or sorry, a little bit behind our view, which isn't really what's going on in the scene. So I'm just going to get rid of that shadow. And so in order to kind of crop out this tree, which even when we have a cutout kind of clean a tree on a cutout background like this, can be a little bit tricky. I think the easiest way to do it is to use what's called the quick selection tool. So if I click and hold on the magic wand button, there's another tool in there called the quick selection tool. And this guy kind of allows me to click and drag and quickly select kind of try to quickly select what parts of my scene I want to keep. And so it's kind of like using the paintbrush. And I'll just go bit by bit here. And just like with the paintbrush, I'm holding Alt, right click and drag so I can adjust. And so right there, you see where I cropped around this space that I actually want to cut out. Then I would hold Alt on the keyboard and kind of, and you can see each time I let go of my mouse, kind of refines my selection a little bit. Like it brings the edges closer to where they make sense, or it tries to guess where we want that edge to go based on where we've kind of painted. And so I'm just going to work my way out here. So it's pretty good at detecting kind of the edge of the tree, which is great. And we might spend a little bit of time, probably not get too crazy in terms of cropping out the white stuff or the background within the tree. And I'm going to try and stick kind of pretty close to the outside edge of the tree here. Okay. Drag, see each time it's kind of figuring out where I want it to go. And again, I'm just going to be somewhat mindful of stuff I don't want to have getting accidentally added, like right in there. I'm just toggling Alt on the keyboard, oops, to kind of change or to remove stuff from my selection. And we can start to go a little faster. Right. And again, just using Alt to kind of deselect some. I'm just focusing on like bigger areas that I know I want to crop out because that'll help me later on, and I'll show you why. Just a second here. Last little bit over here. Grab this stuff. Okay. And again, I'll just kind of remove some of the stuff I know I don't want in like the larger areas. There and there and there. Here. Looks kind of okay. Let's see what that does for us. So now, obviously I could just hit my crop button and that would be our result, right? If I, oops, before I really do that, and I can always press Control Z and continue kind of refining. But what I really want to do at this point is I want to go to where it says up at the top, select and mask. And so again, that previews what my current selection would be if I just cropped it or if I just applied a layer mask. But this also opens up a panel on the right-hand side here where we have this section called edge detection. And if I kind of start toggling that slider, you can see that Photoshop's actually pretty good at figuring out, based on what we've selected, where we want to crop and where we don't, which is awesome. I'll play with that. I do like to smooth up just a little bit because it tends to make the edges a little bit less crispy. So, and then I can also, while I'm in here, I can still continue to refine just using my wand like I would with a paintbrush. And so I'm like looking for big areas where I have like a lot of white. And you can see I just click in a few of those areas and it kind of cleans it right up, which is awesome. That. Okay. Going bit by bit here. And I'm just clicking once in each area, which is really pretty quick. And I'll show you how to get rid of that watermark. Drop this guy. Bit at a time. Okay. I'm just zooming out to make sure I can really see which areas still need it. Good, just a little bit. Awesome. Okay. That looks really pretty good. tweak this a little bit. Maybe that's not quite helping us. Well, yeah, I think it's not. This will kind of, same thing, it'll kind of feather that edge just a little bit. Okay, that's fine. And then we can mess with the contrast and make that boundary a little sharper. A little bit too. Great. Awesome. Okay. And so when we have a pretty good kind of cropped object like that, we'll click OK. Awesome. So now we have that that preview of what our selection would do is what our selection is. So all I got to do is click that layer mask button, and that should be the result. Now, in order to get rid of these little watermarks here, what I'm going to do is actually just apply this layer mask. So I'm actually just going to delete everything in the background, which is totally fine. So I'll just right click on the layer mask and go to apply layer mask. And now I just have this image as if it were a PNG, like with the background all cropped. You can see there's a little bit of work left to be done. So I could use the eraser tool if I wanted to clean a little bit. Just E on your keyboard. Okay, and then the best way to clean up our watermarks, and also something that's really useful for creating and editing materials, is what's called the clone stamp tool. Hit S on the keyboard, or I can go to this little guy that looks like a stamp. And what this allows me to do is if I hold Alt on the keyboard and click somewhere, now I have a brush, and you can see that when I start painting, it'll paint like a duplicate of wherever I clicked, as well as it'll like track, it'll kind of duplicate and track with wherever I started clicking and wherever I drew the sample from. And so I'm going to, like with my paintbrush, I can right click, holding Alt on the keyboard, drag to the left and right to change the size, drag up and down to change the kind of softness of the edge there. And so I'll just use like, little areas within my tree here to cover up those watermarks. And especially with something like a tree, it's really pretty easy to make it look natural. So much going on already. Cool. See any other letters? Right. And so there's our tree. So just like with my scale figures, I would, first of all, I'm going to place this in my scene here. Oops, that's big. A little too big. This is a great example too. I would probably want to, I'm going to move her back just a touch. And I will apply a photo filter here. Actually, grab that. I'll just copy the ones I have. I make the color more cohesive with my scene there. And I will also use my layer mask. Switching back to the magic wand. So that's kind of what I want to do there. I'll deselect this part of the wall, which my tree is in front of. Select inverse, and then do the layer mask. So now I'm cropping out where that edge is and where this edge is. So it looks like it's kind of behind this roof and wall in my foreground. Okay. And so like before, I could do kind of the same tricks I did on my scale figure. I could shade it. I could darken or lighten parts of it to kind of make it fit into the scene a little bit better. So I'd make a new layer, turn on my brush. Darken things there. You can also make one that's white. Same thing. I like to just scroll through these until I find one that kind of looks right. Okay. And then I would also take the selection of my tree there. So I'm holding Control on the keyboard, left click on the layer. I would make a, oops, let me make sure I did that right. And make a new layer. Use my paint bucket tool, make sure I'm on black. That one goes underneath. And just like with my scale figure, I would then free transform, change to distort. I'm just realizing I made a mistake. So let me just copy this layer here. I'll delete the layer mask. I want to make sure I get the whole tree, so I'm getting a natural shadow there. But then I'll select it. That way I get the tops and not cut off by the image. New layer, fill that selection, delete that copy I just made. And then free transform, Control T on the keyboard, right click, distort. And just like with my scale figure, I am kind of trying to match the lines of the perspective and the lines of the shadows there. Okay. And of course, I would also change kind of what we want to make it look like is going on with this scale figure. So like I did before, I'll change that to soft light. I'll make a couple copies. And one of those I'll just turn it down a little bit. So I may then go back in here and kind of, I wonder if this would make it do. All my tree stuff there. Yeah, it doesn't look great. So one way you could do it would be to make a copy again. Delete that layer mask. Select that frame. Now again, I have that kind of silhouette of my tree. Oops. And I would throw that onto as an overlay. Scale figure. That way we kind of get the effect of her being in the shadow of the tree. So, cool. And our other scale figure has since disappeared. All right, so last thing here would be to show how to insert some context. If I go to, obviously, like I said, it's best if you have a image of your site or the context of your site that you've taken yourself. Specifically, if it's something taken from close to the perspective of your view. I'm just going to pull on, let's see here. Some like typical barrio views. I like to try and take them as straight on as possible. I'm looking at the verticals of my lines there, and I'm looking at the horizontal of the sidewalk there. And I'm going to grab a screenshot of this, save that. Where am I? Okay. Okay. And then back over here. Okay. Nope, I'll just drag that frame in. Bring it down so it's behind my render there. And I could probably even just go ahead and throw this. I'll throw that on underneath the same adjustments that I'm using for my sky background there. And this is really pretty simple. Borrow from street there, right click, go to distort. So now I'm trying to match it to my perspective angle based on lines I can see in my image. Press enter. We may also then want to get like a street texture, and we're also going to want to try and line up the horizon line again. A little bit off on that. And I'm going to spend a ton of time cropping that stuff out. Good. Right, and then so I would grab a asphalt texture and throw it in between the edge of my building and that guy there. So also there we go. Because I added my layer mask there. So something roughly like that to give us a sense of the context. It also then kind of overlaps with our covers up the kind of weird horizon in our sky background. So scale figure. That's my tree. profile. Okay. And I'm gonna retransform and go to distort, try to kind of match that up. And that's probably and I might have to grab a couple more images to really kind of make that work properly, but so there you have it. And like I said, if you have an idea like how much your kind of context is going to be covered, how much is going to be shown, it'll give you some help you I mean, might not be worth it to keep that one. All right. Great. So that will conclude this video on context and vegetation. I will end it here.